intellectual property. Always fun, always interesting, subjective at times, I think. The next two guests that we have who are going to walk you through their thoughts, their ideas, their experiences around IP. Ralph Morgan, Scott Calliham, Collective Hemp Brands. From Colorado, they've come to talk to us today around those points, what that means in terms of challenges, experiences, pitfalls, opportunities. So we'll go through. Without further ado, I will hand you through to, who's going to kick off? You're going to kick off? Ralph? Okay, Ralph's going to kick off first. We will go through the session. We will do a Q&A. Hopefully these guys are pretty self-sufficient in subject matter, but if you do find that you want to challenge, identify, talk about something in particular, please do raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone and we'll kick it off there. So without further ado, I will hand over. Thank you. You're welcome. Okay. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Sorry, this one, sorry.
Thank you very much. How is everyone today? All right? By a show of hands, how many people here are entrepreneurs looking to expand their businesses? Many? And by a show, not many in the audience, by a show of hands, who is here because they're looking for opportunities in the space to either purchase product for retail or distribution opportunity? Okay, great. Okay, so this conversation is going to be very boring for you, and I apologize in advance, but we'll try to have some fun, okay? So my name is Ralph Morgan, and I've been in the cannabis industry for 10 years, which means I've got PTSD from it, and I did not have gray hair when I started this industry. So lots of changes, as you can imagine. I started in Colorado in the United States and grew a company that was the largest in the United States and took it public on the Canadian Securities Exchange in January. And it was Organa Brands. Our best product and brand was O.penVAPE. And we really had a moral compass that was wellness-based, and that has served us well. And I can say that with confidence that I think I've made more mistakes than anyone else in the industry. And we were proud of that. We decided that we were going to quickly make mistakes, learn from them, and improve. And that was really a moniker of our organization, is that we failed fast and picked ourselves up, improved, and moved on. Because if you're not growing as fast as an industry, you're really failing. You're really falling behind. And this industry is the fastest growing industry in the world right now, according to Bloomberg, which is quite a statement. This really is the tip of the spear. This is a brand new industrial revolution. It's something we can all be proud of, and we should be. This is a legacy for all of us and an opportunity for us to be on the right side of history. So growing a company requires that you form a foundation that can sustain the pitfalls of this industry. And Scott and I believe that we are talent agents more than we are leaders or bosses. What I mean by a talent agent is that it is our duty to find people that can work not only as hard as we are, but more efficient and with just as much passion. So we've made lots of mistakes, and hiring is no exception. So just for fun, what I'd like to illustrate is what it looks like to interview the wrong way, and we'll quickly see how you can determine that the right candidate will absolutely look like the worst possible employee you could imagine. And then we'll ask a similar question, the same question but different, and we'll get an answer that will illustrate that same person is absolutely right to be on the team and be part of this foundation of this company that you're building that you hope is going to have generational wealth and legacy for you. So to illustrate that, I'd like my partner here, Scott, to play the typical millennial. And there's a lot of sigh when you think of millennials, because we think that it's someone who's more youthful and they have a sense of entitlement, and it creates agita because we think, why do they feel like they can come to work late and leave early to make up for it? to break and go to yoga, to bring their dog to work, to do all these things. Why do they have this sense of entitlement, right? Well, I believe it's our fault that younger employees, younger colleagues and peers have what we feel, which is inaccurate by the way, what we feel is a sense of entitlement. And the reason being is that our children and people younger than us, what's the one thing we continue to preach to them? And that is to live with passion, to do something that matters, right? And that's why we're all here. And by the way, if you're here because you want to just make some money and then ride off and then sunset and then do something later that matters to you, it's not a sustainable model. I know that my friends and family and neighbors and the other parents at soccer practice feel that when they learn that I'm in the cannabis industry or the hemp industry or marijuana industry, however you want to call that, they feel that I worked half as long and make twice as much. And nothing could be farther from the truth. And if you've been in this industry, you know that. You know that we're not only entrepreneurs, but we are activists, and that never turns off. When you're at the grocery store, when you drop your children off at school, you're continuing this obligation for affecting social change. And so we work harder than anyone. And so if you don't have that passion and that drive, then you are not going to sustain the challenges that this industry promises to deliver. So to illustrate this, I thought it'd be fun if Scott could come down here. Anywhere, Scott. I want to interview Scott, and Scott is a 21-year-old. Imagine if you can. Scott is a 21-year-old.
Let's just interview up here.
Okay.
We're going to interview up
Okay.
I'm more comfortable up here.
Okay. I don't want you to do anything you're uncomfortable with. Young person interviewing for a job. So Scott's 21 years old. I'm interviewing him for a job at our cannabis company. So one of the first questions you would expect to ask someone is this. Scott's not really a great millennial name. Can I have someone help me with a better millennial name?
Jackson.
Jackson. Diesel. DJ.
DJ. We'll go with DJ.
What is that? Apple.
Apple.
I like that. Apple. Thank you for coming in today.
My pleasure.
This job is very demanding. Do you think that you can be here 8 o'clock every morning and be ready to go?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You're not sure what ready to go means?
No, I'm having trouble with what 8 a.m. means.
I need you to be ready to go at 8 a.m. We have tons of research to do. We have regulation. We have an activism hat that we all wear. I need you to be here, dressed, fueled up, ready to go every day by 8 o'clock. Is that possible?
Let me have a sip on my latte, please. 8 a.m. I wake up around then when I'm done sleeping. And then I generally need to pop to Starbucks. My girlfriend lives in Paris, so we generally talk, text. That's the prime time, it's later there, it's earlier here. So 10:45-ish, does that work for you?
Okay, so this is what a typical interview used to look like in Organa Brands, and we had well over 100 employees in Colorado, and we were in 12 other states, Jamaica and Canada. And we thought that hiring millennials was a mistake, and we eventually learned that they were the future of our company. The chief medical officer of Organa Brands is a 24-year-old, and she started as an intern. The person who heads up R&D is in their early 20s, and we poached them from the School of Mines in Colorado. Our vice president of public relations and marketing is 23 years old, and he started with us the day he turned 21. So young people, millennials included, are not only important, they're vital to our organization. So how do we turn this candidate, who sounds like a terrible mistake of her to hire, how do we turn this person into the best employee we ever had, and maybe a leader of our organization. We do it by asking better questions. So instead of asking Apple if he can show up and be ready every day at 8 a.m., I'm going to ask the question in a different way. Okay? You ready? And I'm going to convince you, by the way, some of you, that this candidate, the same candidate that answered this question is absolutely a leader of our organization and gets the job today after this interview. Okay? Apple.
Yes. Yes, yes.
I appreciate you applying for the job and coming in for an interview today. I really appreciated the comments you said about this being a passion of yours.
It is.
And you having some personal stories about family members of your own that have benefited from cannabinoid therapy. So thank you for coming in.
I have.
I want to ask you a question about work ethic and timeliness. Today's Friday at noon, and we have a project that's due Monday at noon. And it's a ton of work, but it's one of the best opportunities that an organization has to deliver to the market our very unique message, which is quality, consistency, and reliability. How do you recommend we achieve this task?
How important is it?
It's the most important thing we could do this year.
How is it important to me?
Because you would have an opportunity to lead this project.
Wow. I'm 21. You'll empower me like that?
So when we do interviews, Apple, I want you to know that you should be very proud to be here because we go through a very grueling process. So we interviewed 40 people for your position, first online. You conducted 3 tests, and thank you, and you scored very well. In fact, you were one of the top 3 as far as scores were concerned. So you're here for good reason. You should be very proud of yourself for that. So I ask you again, this is an important project. How would you handle this task as the leader?
Well, if I can lead this and take it to the finish line, and
yes.
What sort of involvement do I expect?
Your name and your fingerprints are all over it. This is your opportunity. How do you suggest we manage this task?
I think at this point, I'll call my girlfriend. I'll tell her maybe I'll fly over on the following Wednesday after we have to knock this out. And this sounds important.
What do you need from me to achieve this?
Stay out of the way.
Do you need the keys to the office for this weekend, or are you taking the time off?
No, I got my own set of keys. You might not have been aware of that. But I'm good to go. Yeah, let's push through.
Great. So what we're trying to illustrate is if you empower a millennial or an employee of any age, you're giving them the opportunity to prove themselves. You're giving them the opportunity to exercise what they feel is not only their right, but their obligation to be part of social change. And that is what this is about. This is not just an entrepreneurial opportunity, but it's an opportunity to lay a legacy. And so millennials don't want to show up at 8 a.m. to do something that doesn't matter. But they'll work all night long and all week long to achieve something that they believe in and they're proud of. So that is our message with intellectual property and with your staff. And it all begins with, how do you feel? Are you passionate about this? Are you doing this for more reason than simply a financial gain? And if so, then share that passion and hand that over with the future leaders of your organization, and the dividends will be profound. So that is the first half of our discussion here, and I'm going to turn this over to Scott, who's going to talk about some other fantastic opportunities in the space.
I couldn't wear my jacket either. It was too hot for me. Thanks everyone for being here. I want to pull out a quote I just grabbed from a Tom Friedman book, but it's to Ralph's point and it's somewhat about the pace of change in today's era. And what he was mentioning was the agricultural revolution into small farms from hunter-gatherers took somewhere between 200 or 300 years. Ag to industrial, a good 200 years. Industrial to technological, maybe call it 100 years. But the pace of that change has ramped up to a point where it can actually make us all feel uncomfortable. And his thoughts on this are that the time it used to take to go from one era to the next, and the pace of that change could be 200, 300, at least 100 years. And the human capacity to absorb that change was quite capable. But now we're looking at technological change. If you think about the iPhone, of all things, was only really getting popular in 2007, 12 years ago, and it's ubiquitous. And the empowerment that that's given all of us, including young people, can be overwhelming. And so his thoughts now are the time it takes to go from introduction to ubiquitous is about 5 to 7 years. And the world can feel uncomfortably different because of those changes. And especially to Ralph's point about embracing everyone, we've had a few gray hairs in the space. It's really, the opportunity is to embrace everyone who can accept the, I had a mentor of mine one time said that one of my biggest strengths was a high tolerance for ambiguity. And I had no idea what that meant. I thought that seems like a slight. I'm not sure if that was a compliment or a slight, but a high tolerance for ambiguity. And I think that's a lot of what we need to impart now is the people that work with us, that comfortable, that being comfortable with ambiguity, being comfortable that you may work for 2 months on a project and the majority of that work might just be thrown away because the regulations change, the landscape changed, the product set that the principles of the business wanted to deploy, they can change very quickly. You see there's thousands of products out today and on today's floor. There's not a lot of variety because we haven't yet been able to be given the freedom to really innovate. You see a lot of tinctures, a lot of particular delivery methods of product. That's going to change, and with the help of people like Dr. Danny, actually, as we start to innovate and bring rare and trace cannabinoids into the mainstream, into awareness and adoption, those delivery mechanisms start to change, the ingredient profiles change. We'll be able to diversify. It may mean that 6 months worth of work, probably not, because once you do 6 months worth of work, you may be too late to the party if you've taken that long. A couple months worth of work can just be thrown away. So people have to be comfortable with that. Had some notes. So we have some slides that aren't visible, but we were talking about how brand ambassadors can become advocates for your company. And a brand ambassador is a well-educated team member, but an advocate is someone who really has drank the Kool-Aid, who believes in the mission of what your company's doing. And those sound somewhat trite in this day and age, but it's still incredibly valuable. And you have to have the stamina to endure the sort of roller coaster of regulatory change, of market acceptance, of market awareness for that matter. When I got into the cannabis industry close to a decade ago, I'm from the Midwest in Kansas in the United States, and my parents weren't exactly excited that I was getting into the cannabis industry. But it's become so commonplace that now my mom talks about it at her bridge club when she's finding her way into bridge at 84 years old. The topic of the table is who's used what CBD product to relieve what pain point. So that part's very exciting. But that mission has to be deployed by your entire team, and that belief system that you're really creating change. I think we have a slide again about, I'll get through these, about playing in a global talent pool. Obviously, this is a global business. The UK is seeing some of the challenges of what we didn't perceive to be as too intense of oversight, where products are getting onto mass market shelves and then the entire CBD lines are being taken off. Those are just typical roller coasters we're going to endure. We have to look globally, we have to plan globally, we have to build our businesses globally, because what might be available to us today in the UK might have to be done in Latin America in 6 months. Germany is a great example. Austria's already sort of taken product off the shelf. You'll see throughout continental Europe that's happening. And again, it's a wonderful, fun roller coaster, but it is just that, and you have to find the people who really want to embrace that mission with you. And I had one last quote that I pulled off from the hotel chalkboard this morning, but it's about life is not about avoiding thunderstorms. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. And I think the whole industry embodies that, and we'll all endure and succeed, and it's incredibly exciting. So thanks for everyone for being here.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ralph or Scott before I ask some? Okay, I will start then. I think some of the early words or the topics that you used, Ralph, were around empowerment, about transfer of ownership in terms of from a cultural piece, and then moving laterally, and we'll cover your sort of next venture in terms of wellness. With these organizations, with these people, and I think as Dr. Danny and Professor Mike alluded to in the earlier panel, how do you transfer or give that freedom or that autonomy through to millennials, through to Gen Z, and whatever's going to be in 10, 15 years? How do you do that?
Well, I think first you have to suffer the consequences of not believing that, and then you really learn that is the correct path. At Organa Brands, we hired 14 PhDs in 24 months, and we employed about 7 at once. So we had this incredible turnaround, and it was because I was headhunting, and I was trying to steal folks from the pharmaceutical industry that were absolutely on top of their game. And I was trying to deliver a promise to someone that had succeeded and had an incredible CV and journey in the pharmaceutical world, and I was offering them the opportunity to make products to affect health and see those results in a matter of months, like 12 to 24 months, as opposed to the typical period of time that a PhD or a chemist would look forward to in the pharmaceutical world conventionally, which is 10 years, $1 billion of R&D, and that product maybe coming to market. And so I felt like I had a really sound objective and path to pick up talent, and it worked. But they didn't. They didn't work in our organization. They had terrible muscle memory. If there was an issue, they wanted to go to the HR department. Well, we didn't have an HR department. It was me or one of my partners, playing that role that day. If they had any concern, they wanted to go to a part of the organization that we didn't have because we weren't a pharmaceutical industry. So through that experience, we decided that we were going to completely shift our philosophy on hiring talent, and we were going to go to universities, and we'd pick the students that were first in their class in chemical engineering, in marketing, and lo and behold, what happened is we had people that didn't have tenure, they didn't have 30 years of work experience, but they also didn't have the baggage and the bad habits that so often come from that. And this is a new industry. Everything about it is different. We have this opportunity to do well by doing well, right? It's a new industry, and it's a new way of doing industry. We all have triple bottom lines where we build in a philanthropic effort. I doubt that there's many, if at all, companies in here that don't have a philanthropic effort that they just automatically assume they have to have because all the consumers expect and demand that. So it's this new generation that gets that. That's what they demand from the brands that they purchase from. That's an extension of their personality. That's also what they demand.
It's the absolute baseline of the fundamental question to when we're play acting a little bit. That baseline has to be there, but then it has to be more than that. It has to be meaningful to that individual, not just that we have a triple bottom line, that we have a philanthropic mission, that we're focused on sustainability. That's the minimum, and we have to do more than the minimum.
So this younger generation understands these core values, and it's real to them. It's not this tongue-in-cheek phrase that so many legacy brands out there have. Today's new organization has to have a philanthropic effort that's sincere and profound, or you're not going to attract the type of talent that's going to help you bring that organization into the finish line.
Okay, thank you. Anyone, any other questions before I fire away again? Okay, from a lifestyle, wellness outlook, if you will, lot of ethics involved, embracing that. From a wider cultural piece in terms of the industry, what sort of advocacy is happening around this point where people are becoming a bit more ethical, they're building in potentially some philanthropy, they're taking care of the world in a better place. Is there anything going on in terms of your championing this element, just from rather than a pure bottom line, we're going to launch this product, we're going to take our money, and as you said at the top of the session, I'll take my money, I'm going to go out and say thank you very much and leave it to what it is. So from a sustainable point of view, what does that look like in terms of messaging and the future world that these guys are going to lead?
So I think in the past we've seen a trend where philanthropy has been used to be a unique selling proposition of your organization. Tom's Shoes would give a pair of shoes away with every purchase. Patagonia has profound philanthropic efforts, and it really helped them as pioneers in that space to differentiate themselves. But what we've seen today is that not only is it acceptable, it's expected, and you'll be shunned. You'll be shunned if you don't have a philanthropic effort. So it's now a requirement. This trend has moved from something that would differentiate you to something you must have. So I think that is the largest differentiation. So for us, we have a skincare line that is sensitive to coral reefs, and all the ingredients won't bleach or harm the things that living organisms that live in the water, which seems like a no-brainer. And in time, we'll see that all skincare products probably will evolve to be sensitive to coral reefs and the oceans. So it's just part of the evolution of what consumers demand and want.
I'm curious to come back to the recruitment piece. And you talked about PhDs within pharma and having to do a number of things in terms of relaxing your own, maybe you're a megalomaniac, I don't know, and you want to sort of let some things go. But in terms of allowing these people from a pharma background comparable to an FMCG creative background where they could have worked for a big brand, go and launch something, we can NPD, we can go to market, it's worked, it's not work. I guess the wider question for me on this point is, how much freedom did you let them have? And what were the learnings from that?
I had to fail first before I understood what was the answer. So we didn't give them much freedom at first, because why should we? They're unproven, they're young, they're out of school, this might be their first professional job. And then we learned that, wow, we hired these people for good reason, they're smarter than we are in their discipline. And if I allow them to go out, fail, improve, and pick themselves back up again and move forward, they're going to do a better job than if I'm micromanaging. And so we just learned to let them go. And as long as we spoke with them and mentored them and made sure that whatever decision they made, the bad ones especially, if they were made with good intent, we celebrate mistakes because we're learning. Obviously, you want to narrow the financial consequences of those as much as you can. But people who care simply don't like to fail. And so if you give them that opportunity and they own it and their name is on it and their fingerprints are on it, they absolutely will care more to not fail than you could possibly threaten them with.
And it feels costly in terms of your bottom line. At times, even the sustainability missions behind the ingredient profiles and the packaging, and we would all love to use purely biodegradable packaging if it was readily available and just as inexpensive as the next option. Those things aren't necessarily possible yet. We're all striving that direction, but each one of those, as you strive in those directions, it is more costly, then the mistakes are more costly, and it can easily become imputed that there's this desire for perfection, and we can't get there yet. We don't have fully biodegradable plastics in each different delivery device that we'd like to deploy. We're leaning towards obviously sustainable packaging in anything we do, but there are hemp-based alternatives that aren't quite ready yet. But you still have to push forward. You still have to make choices that might not be your aspirational choice, but they're your current available opportunity. And so I think, to Ralph's point, you have to also condition yourself that these are going to be expensive mistakes, and it will be with the greatest intent. But we don't have a year and a half to wait for hemp-based packaging. We have to put product out now.
Okay, so I think from an industry as it is now, a sector that it is now, it's innovative, it's disruptive on many levels across pharma. Certainly the wider scope now is within FMCG. Regulation aside, it's very it will control things. What do you see the next 5 years look like in terms of product? We know there's makeup, we know there's pet lines. One of the big beverage companies. We know Molson Coors in Canada are almost there with a launch for December. What does the world look like from a range, but actually maybe potentially from a CSR policy, if it's big corporate and it's driving through our cultures in Canada, in the US, here in the UK, and the wider Europe piece? Did you like that one? Okay. Can I go and sit down?
You want to try to tackle that?
You field that one?
I'm sorry.
In 5 years.
Okay.
Wow. I think it's a wonderful question. It obviously makes one think.
Sorry, excuse me.
5 years, again, with the pace of change, the acceleration of that pace of change, and the requirement for adaptability to that change, we just don't know. And I think Ralph and I both have little kids. Mine are 12, 10, and 5. And in trying to understand how to educate them and prepare them for the world as it will change, and we just don't know what it will look like when they're out in the workforce. I think we have to embrace that same. There's no 5-year plans in our business. There's not a 3-year plan in our business. There's a 12-month plan, and there's a 6-month plan. But beyond that, it becomes unmanageable. I think back to the core value of your team, that adaptability, that willingness to participate, fail, try again, and adapt, it will dictate what it looks like in 5 years. I mean, of course, the genie's out of the bottle. We're not going back to prohibition. We felt that for the better part of 7 years of our first business. That the genie might go back in the bottle, but we're beyond that, but we don't know what 5 years looks like.
I think the next 5 years are going to bring us the label of the fastest growing new industry of our time, and by some metrics that has already been achieved. This is the new industrial revolution. There's nothing more disruptive in healthcare than cannabinoid-based therapies right now. And that is a profound statement. The pharmaceutical industry is the largest lobbying effort in the world, and by a multiplier of many over the second largest lobbying effort, which is ammunition and securities and guns. And big pharma spends far more lobbying pharmaceuticals. You don't put out products like opioids that kill tens of thousands of people a year without a real strong lobbying effort that can overcome those kinds of statistics. So the next 5 years are going to be profound. There's going to be tremendous shakeout. You're going to see legacy brands, meaning brands that you know and that are on the shelf now, adopting CBD like any other ingredient. And so our opportunity as entrepreneurs in the space is right now, and there's a sense of urgency, because as soon as federal regulation and legalization across the board in the United States and other countries is adopted, then the opportunity for us as small entrepreneurs evaporates.
windows.
Because our opportunity to grab shelf space and market share is right now before large companies have the appetite to take this on, and they're just sitting back waiting for the winners to be determined anyway, and they'll purchase the winners. But that is a very, very small select group of people that will be considered a winner. Greatest analogy, I think, is hardware stores. 100 years ago, there was a hardware store on every corner. Well, when Home Depot and Lowe's and the large box stores that sell hardware came into the market, they didn't write a check for every small mom and pop hardware store. They simply lobbied for regulation and just crushed them, and with price compression, they just evaporated. They went out. And the same is going to happen to this industry. So our opportunity is now. If you're going to invest or create a company or set something up and establish a legacy for yourself and your family, then man, you got to do it now. Because in 5 years, it's going to be game over for all of us. So that is my humble opinion, but that's what keeps me up at night, is what can I do right now to affect opportunity and success? Who do I need to partner with? How fast can I grow immediately and today at any expense? I'm not going to waste any time trying to negotiate with a current partner. I want to get to work. I want them on the other side of the table helping me strategize against the largest threats that we have collectively, which is big organizations. It's big industry. So we as an industry need to rally together so we can ensure our seat at the table, so that people quit saying things like, it'll bring validation to cannabis if big tobacco invests in it or alcohol invests in it. Let's kill that notion. It kills me to think that people think that there's validation in CBD and other cannabinoids because Constellation Brands invested a few $1 billion into it. No, they invested a few $1 million in it because it's the largest threat they've ever had to the alcohol industry. So we have to act now, we have to invest in each other, we have to rally together to share in the onus of regulation.
Okay, we're good. Microphones off. Microphones are all off. Okay.
It was a nice role you had going.
And we have to remain flexible.
Yeah. Be adaptive.
Right.
Right.
I'm conscious we're almost due for time. Anyone on the floor would like to ask a question of Ralph and Scott? No? Okay. We'd like to recap last 2 points, and then we can call it a day. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.